So, is Apple turning into Android? With the new iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max releases and the new updates to iOS 16, is Apple really innovating? Are they jipping you for your price? Should you switch to an Android device? Let's find out in this video as we talk about what we saw in the iPhone 14 event, Apple Ultra event, and AirPods Pro 2 second generation. Let's go. So what's different with the iPhone 14 models this year? So with the regular iPhone 14s, we have the same design with the same notch. Very boring, nothing really updated, right? The cameras look the same. Essentially, it's an iPhone 13 rebranded as an iPhone 14. You get a new camera sensor, you get some new features that are mainly software, and that's about it. You get an increase in battery life, and that's about it. iPhone mini is gone, RIP, it tried, but it didn't get enough sales, with it only contributing to 5% of the iPhone 13 sales last year. So with the iPhone 14 Pro models, we do have a new thing called Dynamic Island, which essentially is just a cutout, pill-shaped, rebranded as something that can be integrated with the software. As they showed in the Apple event, when you are swiping through music, it goes up to the Dynamic Island and then shows the music. Whether you have a timer, you swipe up, it shows the timer, it shows notifications for phone calls, and you can long press on it to interact with it. And how it works basically is there is an OLED display, which it shuts off the pixels. So they utilize the screen to make an animation next to the camera cutout. And since things are pitch black with the OLED display, it makes it blend in. That way it seems like it's all part of the software, and they did a really good job with this. Android phones have had pill cutouts, punch holes for many years now, but they never utilized any software, the OLED displays, the way Apple has done here. And it's pretty cool. But they're calling it Dynamic Island, but really it's just a pill cutout with some software integrations. That's about it. Nothing really crazy going on, but nonetheless, they did a good job with the Dynamic Island. So with the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Pro models, we have some differences. The iPhone 14 pretty much looks like the iPhone 13, but rebranded, because you get the same camera design, same notch, same body, and you even get the same chip. And Apple has the nerve to say that the A15 chip is better than last year's chip, which I guess it is. There's some better thermal cooling, but essentially you're getting the same chip on a brand new phone. They're recycling the A15 and putting in the iPhone 14, which really makes it more of an iPhone 13s model than really is an iPhone 14. You get some new camera features, you get a new front-facing camera with autofocus, but nonetheless, I don't think anybody's mentioning this because it's kind of a big deal. Android phones all have like 120 hertz or at least 90 hertz displays. Apple is selling these devices at $799 and $899, and they only have 60 hertz. Let that sink in. $799, $899, only 60 hertz. Kind of unacceptable, and typical Apple being really cheap, but it's supposed to have the best battery life when you get the iPhone 14 Plus model, because it has the bigger screen, bigger battery, lower refresh rate screen, and it's not as power hungry as maybe the A16 is, even though that's supposed to be a more efficient chip, but we'll see. In the iPhone 14 Pro models, they use, the notch is gone, but it has a Dynamic Island, which is really just a pill cutout, which almost is as long as the notch, but not quite. It's a little shorter than what the notch is, but it's not a notch, it's just a pill cutout. Basically, it's the notch like just diving into the screen and forming a pill shape, which is still takes up screen space. If you're watching movies or shows and utilizing the whole screen, you still will have that cutout. It's just not as ugly as the little boat notch that we used to have. So they shrunk the front-facing camera down by 30%, I believe, and they shrunk down the Face ID sensors that they use, the face dot stuff and all that fancy gizmos that they use for Face ID, and shrunk it down to technology that can use the software by integrating the music app. Hopefully Spotify's involved because they use Spotify, and the timers and phone calls. So you can, basically it's like a little notification hub within the pill cutout, which is cool because with the OLED technology, you can shut off the pixels and then make it pitch black to make it look like it's a part of the pill cutout. even though it's not, and it like bubbles out. It's pretty cool. Apple did a good job using the punch hole cutout. And I just saw on Twitter today that Xiaomi is actually copying this design with their punch hole cutout. It's not an official thing. It's something little developers are doing, since Android is open source and they can do that. So it's pretty interesting to see that Android devices and developers are already copying Apple, even though Apple took so many years to copy Android. So basically what we're seeing in the iPhone 14 event is Apple literally is using or innovating and creating things that Android phones have been using for years. The punch hole's been used for years. The notification hub that they use kind of has been used for years. Always on display we've had for a long time. But now they're using the same always on display technology that's on the Apple Watch series 5, 6, 7, and 8 and Ultra. And finally putting on the iPhone by using new LTPO technology, which is only on the iPhone 14 Pro models. And now with iOS 16, you can customize always the lock screen, but you can't get that always on display because it has different LTPO technology where the screen goes down to 10 hertz, I believe, instead of 1 hertz. So now they can go down to 1 hertz, which Samsung's been doing for a long time. They can finally use the always on display to dim it, and you can see things on your always on display, have cool widgets that are interactive. And Apple took years to do this, but I'm not gonna lie, I've always had Samsung phones before I switched to Apple with the iPhone 11 and didn't really look back since then. I think Apple does do things better when it comes to the widgets, but they could use a little bit more work and some more interaction. And now they are making the widgets a little bit more interactive, which is cool, because at first you just tap the widget to go in the app, which is kind of useless. On Android, widgets you can use like by themselves without going into the app, but now Apple is doing that, so that's great to see. But yeah, Apple is literally doing what Android devices have been doing for many years. So innovation, not quite. Is it good? Yes. Are they ripping you off and rebranding things for their own and calling it innovation? Yes. Nonetheless, it's still some pretty cool stuff coming out, and I am pretty excited about it. Now, foldable phones, that's innovating, it's cool, but I never really got into it because I really just need a phone that works and is efficient and has great battery life, which is what I'm going to talk about next. All right, so battery life expectancy on here. We should get really good battery life in the iPhone 14 Plus, since it's 60 hertz. Probably will have one of the biggest batteries. Maybe a battery similar to the 14 Pro Max. And it has 60 hertz, so it should have really great battery life. And standby times on iPhones have been phenomenal. I'm hoping the always on display doesn't cut into the battery life, because when I used to have Samsung phones, Pixel phones, the always on display would kind of kill the battery life despite it being energy efficient. So hopefully battery life is very good. I expect it to be very good in the iPhone 14 Pro model, since they should be bigger batteries in there, since they took away the SIM card tray. I don't know how that would interfere with that, but they took away the SIM card tray, and that's a concern. So what do I mean by that? They took away the SIM card tray. What does that mean? So we have physical SIM cards that go inside the phones, and that's how you kind of swap between phones and different carriers. You take a SIM card out, put another one in. Well, Apple did away with that, and this is US models only. International iPhone 14 Pro models will still have the SIM card tray, but in America we don't. So basically it's an eSIM, which is inside the phone. It's a digital SIM, and that's how you switch between carriers. It's supposed to be seamless, but I think Apple did this to keep everybody from switching their phones. But it's supposed to be a non-complicated switch, even if you are switching from iPhone to Android. But I'm not sure how that would translate if you're trying to switch your SIM information from an iPhone eSIM to an Android eSIM. Not sure if it's easy, but it's one way that I think Apple is trying to make it more complicated for people to switch to Android devices. But who knows? iPhone 14 Pro models are also supposed to have brightness that's 2000 nits. Really bright, just like the Apple Watch Ultra. It's gonna have 2000 nits of brightness, so seeing things in bright sunny daylight, Arizona sunlight, California sunlight, the brightest sunlight, you should be able to see your phone easily. Now that might be a battery hit, because 2000 nits is a lot of power and a lot of brightness, which is going to consume a lot of energy. So I'm curious to how the battery life will degrade or drain if you're utilizing all 2000 nits. So I'm assuming Apple put a really big battery in here to compensate for the 2000 nits, and the A16 should be efficient. Speaking of the A16, it's funny, I think I saw a YouTube video where they talked about, so I didn't really watch the event, I just watched the highlights. And I think one of the highlights I saw that they were comparing the A16 chip to the A13 chip. 13, that's 3 chips away, and it's barely better than the A13 chip. So what does that tell you? If you do the math, I'm not doing the math, but I'm going to make an educated guess that the A16 is not that much more powerful than the A15. If anything, it's probably an A15 that's been, overclocked and recalled the A16. So I don't know, it could be an A15 that's overclocked and just rebranded as A16, but they didn't compare it to the A15 because they knew it wouldn't be that big of a jump in performance. So with it being just a better performance than the A13, just by those numbers that they showed, it's not that big of a difference in performance. And do we notice this performance? Probably not. With most flagships that have been coming out for the last like 5 years or so, 4 years, we don't really see performance difference in between the phones. They still open apps fast, they still play your music, they still play videos, they still download stuff, they still make phone calls, they still make texts. So with the chips being faster and better, unless you're a heavy video editor or music producer and you use your phone solely for that purpose, and you'll see the difference in the rendering, yes. Easily you'll see a difference in rendering. But if you're doing everyday tasks, you won't notice it, and those numbers are literally irrelevant for you. So it's still kind of weird that they would compare it to such an old chip, but it's Apple, and that's their ultra marketing for their ultra devices and their max devices to show you that it's way better than the competition and its older stuff. But yeah, it's not that much difference between the chip performance between the A16 and A15 based on what Apple was showing us in their comparisons. Next is the cameras. This is something I'm very excited about. 48 megapixels, bigger sensor, new telephoto lens, but there's no zoom, and I'm actually kind of irritated about that. Apple should have at least utilized maybe a 10x zoom periscope, but I know that might be coming to A15 or the iPhone 15 maybe. They're gonna do that. So there's still no periscope zoom lens. You still get 3 times optical zoom. And because of the bigger sensor, they now use a 2 times zoom utilizing the 48 megapixel sensor. So they just crop in on that sensor, but you still get the full resolution of 12 megapixels. So essentially it's not like you're digital cropping into it. It's still an optical 2 times zoom utilizing the sensor and cropping in on 12 megapixels instead of the full 48. Still pretty cool, but I'm sure everyone wishes that they had something to compete with Samsung's really good optical zoom. So I would actually be really excited to see what the 10 times zoom, 3 times zoom would look like on Apple's ISP, which is image signal processor, and it should be better than the A16. And Apple's ISPs have always been pretty good at processing photos, so hopefully next year they have that. So with the 48 megapixels, it's obviously going to not be a full 48 megapixels. It's going to bend down to 12 megapixels. And the pixel bending is basically taking all 48 megapixels and then combining all the pixels together for a really sharp 12 megapixel picture, which should utilize more light too, because the pixels are bigger. I forgot how many microns it is, but the pixels are bigger, which means the bigger the pixels, the more light information the camera can take in. So with that information and that system, it technically should take really good crisp photos, but we will see. And again, this is all paper, but real world examples will really show you what the cameras can do and cannot do well. So we have a new ultra wide lens, 12 megapixels for that one, and it has a f2.2 aperture, which means it will let in less light than the last one, but it should be sharper. We still have macro photography, which is great. I was hoping in the far out advertisement that they would actually have a thing in the camera for astrophotography, but they don't. It's not advertised, but with the whole photogenic engine or photo something engine it's called, it is bringing in more light. We do have a bigger sensor, which brings in more light. We do have a faster aperture, I think, which brings in more light. So technically, with all that combined with, you should be able to take better astrophotography if you are using the longer part of the night mode, which means you have to keep the camera still and the night mode will still be utilized at its maximum. Or you could download a separate app to utilize the camera into your own little bulb mode and see what you can do with that. I think you can do that with a Lightroom app, but I'm sure there's different pro apps where you can utilize bulb mode with your camera, and that way you can try to take as much light as possible for some space pics. I'm sure some YouTubers, when they get their hands on it, will do it first. I pre-ordered the phone, but mine's not coming in until October, so there'll probably be videos made before I even get to have a chance to make my own video showing you what the phone can do, but stay tuned for that. I did pre-order that and the Apple Watch Ultra, so I have videos for those when I get them in October. So anyway, front-facing camera is new. It has a new autofocus, finally. Autofocus has been on, I think S22 Ultra finally had it too. So autofocus on the front-facing camera is huge. iPhones have always been the best when it comes to social media cameras, and the selfie thing is used a lot. So now that they have a new front-facing camera with better light, picking up better image processing, and it's still 12 megapixels, but the sensor is new, so with autofocus it should be able to make a lot more crisp selfies and group selfies. So that's pretty exciting and something to look forward to as well. And I forgot to mention, cinematic mode is now getting 4K 24 support. Finally, I knew this would happen in the new phones. I was hoping to be 4K 30 cinematic mode, but nonetheless, finally 4K 24 cinematic mode. They didn't mention any new upgrades to slow motion, but I hope there's some upgrades there, so we'll see. It's not mentioned on the website or on the Apple event. Maybe it was and I missed it. But 4K 24 cinematic mode, and they now have a new action mode for stabilization. Again, it's supposed to have gimbal-like movements, but Android phones like Google and Samsung have been steady shot, I think is what it's called. They've had this for a while now, but it takes away from the quality. When Samsung and Google use it, it goes down to 1080p and it crops in heavy, so that way the stabilization is really, really smooth and gimbal-like. I'm wondering how Apple will do it, because Apple usually does things a little better, but we'll see. I'm excited to see it. Hopefully it's supported in 4K, and if it goes down 1080p, probably won't even use it. Like, the iPhone already has the sensor shift there to help with stabilization already, so hopefully the videos are stable enough to where we don't need the action shots. I imagine you would utilize this if you were mountain biking and have your phone mounted on your forehead or something, and you wanted to do that. Just trying to replace the GoPro sensation, I guess. Like, even though GoPro uses like 5K, so you can't really replace that. But if you don't have a GoPro and you want to strap your iPhone to your helmet, I guess, and shoot some steady shots like that, I guess that's something you could use it for. But who knows? People are very creative, and people will probably use that in a way that is good for them and their content that they want to create. So that's one thing I forgot to mention, is the cinematic upgrade and the action shot. So we talked about the eSIM, we talked about the new cameras, talked about the dynamic island, what to expect from there. Speaker quality, I hope, is better. I hope that's good too. HDR is going to be better, up to 1600 nits when watching HDR content, which is great, because you know HDR can get really dim, but with the bright screen, it's pretty incredible and be good for HDR editing. You do get Pro RAW, get to shoot in 48 megapixels straight, all 48 megapixels, so you can edit at will with that. And you get the Pro RAW video capture with Dolby Vision, so you get the Dolby Vision video capture as well. And hopefully that's supported in 4K 60. I don't know if they mentioned it's gonna be supported in 4K 60 or 4K 30. I think it's supported, but I hope that has an upgrade too. We'll see. But if not, it's probably because the A16 isn't that much more powerful than the A15. So we'll see. I think that's it. I'm gonna make a separate video covering the Apple Watch Ultra and how that compares to other watches. But before I go, let's talk about the storage capacities. It does start out at 128 for $999 with the Pro model and $1099 for the Pro Max, $799 for the regular, and $899 for the 14 Plus. And with storage options, if you are going for everyday use, nothing too crazy or serious, 128 would be just fine. If you download your music, download some movies, and you might utilize some Pro RAW features here and there, and download a lot of apps, 256 might be all right. 512 if you are going to use your phone as like one of your main content creating devices. If you're going to save movies in 4K, Dolby Vision, full capacity, Apple lossless downloads, even Spotify downloads or YouTube downloads. If you're going to download a lot and have a lot of local stuff, 512 might be what you need. 1 terabyte is definitely overkill unless you're a creator and this is your only device and you're going to have all the Pro RAW images and videos, all the Dolby Vision videos, and you're going to have all the heavy apps and have all that storage on those apps. So 1 terabyte might be good for you on that regard. And lastly, one more gripe, no USB-C. Still using Lightning. Hopefully they'll translate to USB-C next year, because it's hard to transfer these files on the really slow Lightning connector. Transferring data with Lightning is very slow and terrible for ProRAW capture and Dolby Vision. So if they utilize USB-C like they did with the iPad, I was hoping they'd do that this year, but apparently not. Next year we are expecting periscope zoom lens and a USB-C port. Dynamic island might make a return as well, so we'll see. That's it from me. If you liked the video, thumbs up, subscribe, hit that bell icon. I'm out.